Hello, and welcome back to Transcending Ascension. Today we have a real treat. We have Will from the Esoteric Cross on the show with us tonight. Now, if you're unfamiliar with his show, it is recently blowing up, and for good reason, on YouTube. He brings to life the Kabbalah and tarot in a way that I haven't found since the originals, Aleister Crowley and Dion Fortune times, where they were really deeply invested. They're the original, like the Rider-Waite originators of it. They really felt it. And Will today at the Esoteric Cross, I feel, is tapped into that same vein. So join me in questioning him today on how he is able to accomplish this. Hello, Will, and thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, we are very blessed to have you here, because sometimes I don't know if you realize the way you tap into the depths of the subconscious mind. It's not an automatic. Like, lots of people get involved in the spiritual world, but they don't hit that deep vein that you have found. Do you think, is there something that happened in your process to, because we all have our stories. How did you find your depth?
Curiosity. So it all started back when I was a teenager. I had this I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist at heart. So I had so many questions that I wanted answers to when it came to symbolism, when it came to the occult in general, but I didn't really call it by that name yet. I just didn't know what was going on, like why certain symbols were everywhere. So I think curiosity pulled me into this. And as I started putting puzzle pieces together, I realized that there was something deep to this, that there was something sacred to this. And I really just started practicing. So I think that developing, whether this is like wisdom or understanding or whatever it is, it's a skill. It's something that you work at on a daily basis. So I think that it's a lot of work.
I would agree with you there. And it comes with that alchemy. Like, did you find that going through the process and choosing to dive into things like our own pain, that this brings out that depth that now brings things like tarot and Kabbalah to a deeper life than it was prior?
Yes, I wasn't trying to dive into pain at all. I think that that's just something that happens. One of my teachers was telling me that when you sign up for occult work, whether this is magic or alchemy, I mean, I guess it's all really alchemy, but you are putting yourself on an accelerated path. And when you put yourself on an accelerated path, it will draw situations to you, and some of them can be very painful. But the reason for that is there's alchemical gold. There's something within that pain, or the joy, or the exciting times. There's something within it for you to pull out of it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. That is so true. And that's what I'm always trying to tell people in my own teachings, is that you need to find, I tell them to find the pain, though, like, find the pain, open the pain, and there you go. And so this brings me into tarot, because sometimes we can have pain and not know why. And I tell people to use tarot like your own therapist. Like, you can use it as a therapist. It can tell you your problems and it can tell you how to fix them. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's exactly how I use it. I love tarot as a tool for self-development, and a lot of people who come to me with questions for tarot readings, it's always usually something difficult going on in their lives, whether this is something like a health issue or a relationship issue, um, v- family issues, anything, or money. There, it's those situations I feel like are our biggest teachers, and a lot of the times I think that it has to do with presence. I've been getting into a lot of presence lately, and especially within tarot, the suit of the swords has a huge focus on presence, with it having to do with your attention, your focus, um, also your communication, the thoughts, the mental body. And that's a really, really big thing, I think, when it comes to dealing with any kind of difficult situation or disparities or anxieties or even depression. Um, so yeah, I feel like tarot is a great tool for me to help other people through their pain and their struggles. And it's a way for me to teach esoteric knowledge to people who might not be as interested in going down this exact same path. Um, as far as myself, I use it very sparingly on myself.
Yeah, I'm the same. It depends. I go in and out of phases. Usually, like on the board for the whole year, I don't use it that much. But when I'm going through specific what's going on, like something's coming up, and it can be around eclipse times or anything when you have things surfacing, ancestral, past traumas, and you're like, what is this? Or a block. When you come across a block and you're like, okay, why am I sabotaging myself here? Or whatever the issue is, even if you have constant outside things affecting you, it's something inside you. And I find it's helpful to ask it, why? What is this? And you see repeating characters pop up. Like there's certain characters, and it's specific. I love that you said the swords, because whenever I'm asking questions about something to do with my evolution or something to do with my awakening, it's always the swords that are answering. And because that's the mind, that's the mental, that's the first step in the spiritual awakening and the expansion. So I like that you noticed that as well, because that's just in how it comes up. And that's, you can't teach that. That's just literally what happens when you turn the cards. So love that there. What are you have a class now where you're teaching this to students. And I know you had a magic class prior, and the tarot one came out in July, correct?
Yeah, it did. It's really eye-opening for both me and the people that I teach. What we do is we look at the cards side by side with the Kabbalistic tree of life. So I'm teaching tarot with Kabbalah at the same time, which I think has been the best way to learn. Like I learned tarot on its own and I learned Kabbalah on its own, but when I put them together, it was like magic. It was sparks went off for me, and my understanding of tarot just I don't know how to explain it. It really clicked for me. The way that I gave tarot readings greatly, greatly, greatly improved. So yeah, that's just the way I teach it to other people, and it's so fascinating to watch people get their gears turning when they look at the cards side by side. But we look at each suit uh, going from 10 to 1, actually, side by side with the Tree of Life, because there's 10 Sephirot on the Tree of Life, and each card corresponds with a Sephirot. So we have these 4 suits, and there are like 4 different trees. And then with the major arcana, we have 2 trees of life. Because there's 10 Sephirot, but there's that hidden Sephirot called Da'ath, and we can lay 1 card over Da'ath with the major arcana. So we have 2 groups of 11 because there's 22 major arcana cards. So it's really interesting to watch people's reactions and to find the coincidences and correlations with the tree.
Agreed. And that's when I got introduced to you, is when I was pairing the two together. Because, and you're right, tarot came, it's like the tarot itself got downloaded with deeper information when the two are correlated together, and you get to see like the symbolism behind the Kabbalah and the symbolism behind the tarot. You can see, and that led me into the whole Golden Dawn and studying that entire path, which is just fascinating. Like it does take you only so far, and then you kind of need to go back to Christ consciousness. I find I'm always having to go back to that middle pillar Christ consciousness and that alone. But there's so much in our evolutionary spiral, that little pockets to like seed out, and Kabbalah and tarot are invaluable for that. Like you cannot not have a stage of that. I feel like in an awakening. Do you think someone could bypass this stage and still find the same depth in symbolism, in knowing your subconscious, in realizing your own powers?
That's a really good question. I kind of do. I think that there are some people who And Eckhart Tolle is one of my favorite people. I love watching his videos, reading his books. He has such fascinating information and knowledge on the ego and the way that ego works and alchemy, but it's in a very different perspective. I mean, really, it's not in a different perspective. It has just this different flavor to it, to the way he teaches, and it has everything to do with presence, being here in the moment and kind of stepping back and watching the thoughts, but or watching the pain body, watching all of these things. So yes, um, it depends. I think that it depends on the way that your mind is set up, because I feel like the path of Kabbalah and tarot and ceremonial magic is really geared to us in the Western world. And it's really hard to practice such total presence and consciousness while living in the Western world. It's almost impossible to stay like that 100% of the time. So, yes, in a way.
Yes, and I like what you said there about the Western world because that's what got me because you come and go from these things as you're learning. And what pulled me into wanting to find more and then searching on YouTube and finding you was actually Carl Jung saying that a lot, and because in his day especially they were getting really into the hippie Eastern ways, and he's like, that's all well and good, we do need to mix East and West. However, the Western mind is going to be more primed in their DNA to learn things like like the Kabbalah and even tarot. Like our Western roots, our DNA holds that learning within it easier for us to access. Where when we're trying to learn Buddhisms and stuff, it can in all the different Hindu yogi philosophies, it can sometimes like feel like I get it. Obviously, we're all one, God, love, but like there's something about the other side of things that just you have that home feeling. And I feel like that's what Christ consciousness does for us all, because that's also in our DNA. But there was something in the occult information that also felt like primal, like it existed there previously and it did just come out like I already knew it.
Yes. Yeah. That's one of the things that I kind of talk about a little bit in my courses. And I mean, I kind of say this all the time, but none of this stuff, at least in my opinion, the way that I look at it, none of this stuff in of itself is the truth. Like I'll say this to people all the time, that Kabbalah is not the truth, and this is not a religion or anything like that. The same thing with magic or tarot. This isn't the truth, but this is the finger that's pointing at the truth. Like if the moon is the truth, Kabbalah is the hand that's pointing at it. The truth is something that's in you. Like what you said, it's that Christ consciousness, which is a word that we put for that truth and that I guess that authenticity or this higher state of consciousness within the self, the divinity, the God spark within the self. It's something that's within you, and all of these systems are just ways of showing it to you. I think it depends on the way that you are set up and how you recognize that. The way that I'm set up and the way my path was laid out for me, kind of, and I followed every step and made my decisions to get to where I am. That I guess this is just for me, and this is what clicked for me, and no matter what path it is that you choose, I think that there's something inherent within all of us. How we have a specific way of sharing that path with other people, and some people are teachers, some people make works of art, or some people have um, subconscious layers in their communication with the way that they talk to people. But we all have our different ways of sharing our story and our path with other people and inspiring other people.
100%. For like the almost 8 billion of us that there is, that means there's almost 8 billion paths because we're each our own. And I love that you said God spark, because that's my other word for it too, is that God spark within that heart chakra space that basically emanates our entire reality, essentially. And then using that subconscious creator power, like your subconscious. This is why Carl Jung one day will be hailed as actually the best spiritual teacher there ever was, because he was with being able to slip it in there. And that's why the red book's so profound, because it shows you, yeah, he knew everything about occultism. He was just hinting at it before because he didn't want to be wooed away. Like, he was talking to his own higher beings, just as channelers today claim to talk to higher beings. He also was, and he admits it in that book and talks deeply about it. But essentially, like, your subconscious, we are God, but the subconscious is that God. And it's why we don't have like, I want $1 million now, but it doesn't happen, because I need my subconscious to actually be the one to put that out there. And then I would have $1 million, but it has to be the subconscious, and us communicating with that subconscious that is essentially sleeping eternally / never sleeping, is with symbolism. So Carl Jung teaching us symbolism, and then the tarot and Kabbalah, like you said, I love that, pointing at the truth. It's just that truth of us and realizing we're God, but like getting it through to the subconscious, and then getting it through in every which way you can imagine, so that we really integrate it and can walk in that, like, essentially Neville Goddard and Joseph Murphy were the ones that were actually spot on 100%. And apparently they learned from the same teacher from the Caribbean, which is just wow, because that guy would have been great if he wrote a book, because that's really the answer. It's just authentically getting that subconscious to really do it for us. It's the whole game. So I see your channel doing huge things, because it's actually getting there. There's a lot of channels going, oh, manifestation, but there's so much more. Affirmations are great, but the depth needs to be there. That's why The Alchemist too, you said you liked her as well, and the work she's doing. How do you see her work pairing with your work? Like, what she teaches, are you seeing that as well, like for the collective?
I've only seen a couple videos, by her, but yes, I think that there's just something bubbling up. There is something bubbling up within the collective, and I can see it there. I can see it in other places. One of my favorite people that I look up to is Damien Eccles. I'm not sure if you've heard of him or watched any
Yeah.
of his stuff or read his books. Amazing. Yeah, I just think that there's something really powerful bubbling up, and I feel like there always is, but today with technology, there's a way to share it. We have algorithms, which are beautiful, or they can be, and it's just, I mean, I'm excited for the awakening that's happening, and I think that it's really needed at this time.
Do you see your place staying as, like, do you enjoy teaching? Like, I actually had some classes, like proper classes, a couple years ago, and honestly, it wasn't for me. I was like, mm-mm. Like, I don't know why. It just, sometimes things don't jive, and sometimes they do. And I kind of like the bigger, broader journalism teaching. But you seem to really like that personal teaching. Do you see that where you're going to stay, or where do you see your future going?
That's a good question. I don't really know. I don't really know where it's going, but yes, I love it. I love it so much. I think I always knew, since I was really young, that teaching was something I enjoyed. I didn't know what I'd be teaching. I just knew that teaching in some capacity would really light my fire. But yeah, no, I can tell every class I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. There's something magical that happens when you find your path and you see evidence of it, and you know that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And I have felt that, and I've never felt that type of fulfillment, I don't think, in my life. Um, so yeah, I think I'm just gonna see it through until I can't take it any farther. So we'll see what happens.
That's fantastic. Do you know about human design?
No, well, I was watching one of your videos about human design, but no, I don't know that much about it.
Because I'm always fat. Because when you learn your design type, like me learning I was a projector, just made everything
Yeah.
click and be able to like fuel the energy that much better. And I'm doing a series with someone now trying to bring more awareness to it. And everybody I do a podcast with, I'm like, do you know? And as soon as it's most people are generators or manifesting generators, which means they have constant energy. Do you ever find you burn out in your work ever? You seem pretty
Mhm,
consistent, but you do burn out?
mhm. I burn
Yeah,
out.
probably
I burn
projector.
out really, really hard, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, projectors do. And most people preaching the spiritual world are going to find themselves projectors because that's what the projector is called to, is to honestly save the world, as cliche as that is, but by projecting with our innate wisdom that is coming down from on high, and we're just meant to voice it back out to the people. And that's it. That's what I found my purpose being, so very simple. I kept trying to make it overcomplicated, and it's just simply this.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. That's a lot how I feel. So how many types are there?
There is 5 officially. So there's the projector, which we're about 20% of the population now, which isn't too bad. I'm just assuming you're one now. And then you have your
Yeah.
manifesting generators. And so you could have just a manifestor, just a generator, or a manifesting generator combo, and they make up about 70% of the population. And then you have there's this type called receptors, and they're only about 1%. They're only about 1% of the population. And then you have your manifestors. They hold about 9% of the population. So outside it, so there's generators and manifesting generators 70, but then manifestors, because those are very, very important too. They're going to be they're the ones who are going to listen to the projectors and actually, like Elon Musk, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a manifester. The ones that actually take it to the world to be like, okay, here is our endless energy and here is our hover cars, the ones that are actually going to implement it physically into the world, where the projectors are here just to intellectually plant the seeds and get that flowing. Because that's one thing I can find frustrating as a projector. It's, I like telling people, but you kind of have to sit back and watch the world and just go, what can I
Mm.
actually do about it?
There's a bit of the observer archetype there too. Yeah. Mhm.
Exactly, exactly. Actually, do you know your archetypes? Do you teach people that they have a certain set of archetypes?
Yeah, well, are you meaning like the Enneagram? Like where you are on there, or are you talking about like Jungian archetypes
Yeah,
or
Jungian
okay.
archetypes. And then I even like the teacher Caroline Miss, who's officially a Catholic, but she just says, I speak Catholic, but I teach spirituality. And she teaches that we have 12 archetypes and they
Mm,
dominate our
mhm.
personality and who we are. And that's another thing I learned to teach people. Like, we have the saboteur, the victim, the
Yeah,
prostitute,
the
and there's
parts.
one more that we all have. Do you vibe with those teachings?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know as much about parts work, but I mean, I listen to things about parts work, and I notice them in myself. I don't know them all, uh, because I kind of look at it too. It something ringed within me when you said 12, as I noticed that there's these 12 zodiac signs, which are all archetypes of the self, archetypes of our consciousness and this universal consciousness. So that makes sense too that it would have that number. Um, but yes, it is something that I notice within myself, and it's something that I'm increasingly starting to talk to those parts, which it feels weird. But yeah, it's definitely something I think that we all have. Consciousness is not one stream. It is split into several streams that you can tap into and move them around and play with them. And that's a huge part of what we do actually with magic and ceremony. And the whole point of rituals is to separate consciousness into these parts and purify them, strengthen them, and reintegrate them. And to be able to pull one out when you need it. And whatever you pull out when you need it is reflected to you in the external world because there's no real difference. What you do in the internal is reflected in the external and vice versa. So I can see how actually the psychological model, I know Richard Schwartz talks a lot about parts work, and I think that he's very interesting too. But it, I think that there's like the psychological aspect of it too, and then there's the aspect of it where you're actually doing the work or blending it maybe with spirituality or presence or energy work, or ritual or ceremony. And I think that kind of blending it all together has been the most effective, at least for me. But yeah.
Oh, 100%. It's just a constant spiraling through different teachers, which when I started, I thought that was a problem. And I thought I should be finding the one to like, this is the one. And then it wasn't until the last few years that I'm finally like, there isn't one. Like you said earlier, there isn't one, and not one thing is 100% correct. And I'm almost want to say I'm done, but we'll see. But done falling down the rabbit hole of being like, you're the one. Because I've done that with
Right.
so many different teachers, but then you keep learning, and then you're like, and then they say something that you just know is not true. And then you're like, oh, I guess you're not the one. And you keep going and you keep going. The closest I've ever found to that is Matthias De Stefano, I think, is like the closest to like being, have you heard of him? I think everyone has.
Mm-mm.
Oh my goodness. He's just fantastic. I'll leave it at that. My audience already, I blather on about him all the time. But he remembers all his past lives, and everything he said correlates. And he's been saying it since he was a child. And it correlates with just known information. But it's just that cycling through of we are frequency, we are energy. We're not really real. We're thought formations of God. And getting that through and what that means for us in the future. Do you see us living in that golden age? I know we're not going to be 100% there, but do you see us getting a taste of it in our lifetime, assuming we live to be 100 or so?
Mm, no. No. Um, well, it depends. Like, to me, it's about creating heaven on earth within
Hmm.
yourself. It's about your consciousness.
So
So
we
you
might be there,
creating
but
heaven within
others.
yourself. Yeah, you can be there, if you choose. The world, it requires participation. This is a collaborative experience. This is a shared reality. Um, it would take a heck of a lot of people to be on board, and if we were all to create this golden age, it would be it would be a little dark because what if there's too much light? And that's kind of a big part too, is being able to balance the darkness and light. There is darkness within us, and there's darkness within this reality. Um, there is darkness within form. So I think that there is too much darkness around us, and we're constantly transmuting it into light. But we have to be able to balance these things out. So I think it depends on what you mean by a golden age. Like, if everybody were to awaken to their consciousness, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, essentially, and it's why I find myself obsessed with doing it, because I know if
Mhm.
more of them did it, it would add to the power. Like we've seen since COVID and all the
Right.
awakenings, and then the literal, it's been speeding up like crazy. That's because they're waking up like crazy. It's all one. So if we kept that going, technically, we could see. I don't think we're not going to be close to finished, but we could at least live in a world where it's transitioning, but we are assured it's transitioning well. Like our grandchildren are going to have a happy life. We won't have to like being like, oh no, they're not going to make it. Like the doom stories. I don't believe that at all. But
Mhm.
I just wonder how good it'll be before we're gone.
I'm sure it will continue. There are dark forces. There are dark groups of people, that I know that there are, who use this information against other people. But there's this awakening. We were just talking about it earlier. There's something bubbling up within the collective, and people are looking for answers. People are curious. More people are turning towards the truth than ever, that truth that's within themselves. More people are living in their authenticity. More people are fed up with the way things have been, in certain areas or aspects of our society. So I definitely think that it's getting better. I just think that we all have to stay very vigilant, and keep sharing our information and keep sharing our light in whatever ways that we can. Um, but I hope so.
Ab-
I hope a lot more people awaken. But I definitely think that we are on the right trajectory.
100%. And I think you can see it already happening, especially with channels like yours and how you've like it's grown so much because people are hungry for this information and for it to be clearly brought to them because they want to evolve. And so I hope to like open not a church but like a spiritual center here in the physical flesh so that we can, and you would know, like with ceremony, like when you bring a group of people together to meditate, to pray, to chant, to sing, to sound heal, like the vibrations that, and if we had one on a ley line, like the power that would have on the overall grid could do actual visceral magic where the next day you could wake up to, and they've done like we've all heard of like the meditations where they've had 8,000 people meditate at once, and it actually took the death count in the city of the day down by I think around half. I can't remember the exact quote, but it was substantial amount lowered. So with your, do you, because you teach in a group, do you guys do, or it's all one-on-one? Because do you do, I've been in groups before where we would do group meditations and stuff. Do you facilitate that with your classes?
Yes, yeah, we do it as a group. We do it Zoom live stream. Um, so yeah, no, we do meditations and rituals together. Like with the ceremonial magic course, we'll be doing rituals together, but it's going to be a lot more focused on teaching it and then kind of walking through it together. So it's a little bit difficult because everybody's starting their journey. So it's not exactly like we all know exactly what we're doing and we're coming together at a certain time and doing it like twice a week or anything. But I am a part of groups that do that, and there is some special energy that happens when you do that all together, when it is physical and in person, even if it's virtual too. But it's especially when everybody is like willingly channeling this energy through them and putting it into the center and sending it out to people that they care about or the world or the egregore of the area or the group. um it's very powerful stuff. I would love to do that, and I wish you the best of luck too with that because it sounds so exciting.
Yeah, I literally live beside a church too. So it's like God's almost like maybe this is the thing because I keep hearing that they turn over and they keep betraying each other and people keep stealing it from each other, and it's like that, not that I want them to have trouble, but it seems like I wouldn't be surprised if the church is for sale one day, put it that way. And I've
Mhm.
already priced them out, and it just seems like something that we can do in the flesh. I'm always like, what can we facilitate in the flesh that'll make this come about into the real world? Like, would you have any suggestions that could make this in the I even asked the alchemist, and she was like, don't buy she's against buying slave clothing because it makes the whole, I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh, she's one who like awoken. I knew consumerism was bad, but I didn't realize like there's some things going on, darkness that we don't even consider that we are contributing to openly. So do you
Yeah.
have any thoughts there in the real world of what to do?
Maybe not specifically about things that we could maybe stop doing because we haven't considered the evils of it, but that's 100% one. Um, I know one thing with me lately, just one thing for myself that I've been doing is trying to eat a really clean diet, and I've, lost a bunch of weight, but it's not even the weight thing. It's the your vessel and taking care of your environment and not trashing it because it's what houses your consciousness. And when you change that vessel and you care about what you put into that vessel, the way that your consciousness operates or filters down through this vessel changes. And I feel like if everybody were able to take care of their body a certain way, like not putting substances in it that harm it, we would be able to approach reality in a better way. And then another way, kind of like what we were saying earlier, is we all have our own way of taking divinity and sharing it out with people. And sometimes it's through teaching or tarot, or sometimes it's subconscious layers of conversation, or sometimes it's music or art, or maybe you're the manager at your job and you lead the team really well, and you put little things in there that kind of trigger people that work for you, uh, uh, things that kind of inspire them to go on their own path of ascension. But we all have our own way of doing it. So the only thing that I really encourage people to do is to figure out what that is. Just get in touch with that source energy, get in touch with that Christ consciousness, or that Tiferet energy within the self, and see where it takes you. Because once you meet that consciousness, it might take you into a completely different direction than you ever thought it would. And it might be the most fulfilling thing that has ever happened to you. And you might create some of the most wildest things that you would have never thought that you would have created. Um, and I think that the more that we do that and the more that we embody that energy, the less suffering that we experience, and also the less suffering that we create for the people around us.
Yes, 100%, 100%. When we're living this, when we're consciously living, new things pop into existence, and that goes into the eating healthy. The one of the things I tell, I'm also big on eating healthy, and you do automatically lose weight without even trying, because when you cut out all the bad stuff, there's not much left. So it just ends up happening. But you create, your cells are always regrowing, and now your cells can grow and harness and hold more bandwidth, so that you can literally download more information, hold more consciousness. So when you're living in that real world, we'll think of more ideas. Like, we're the pioneers right now. So it can seem kind of like, is anything going to happen? But then you see it. You see that the markets are getting bigger and people are getting more thoughtful. And it's slow, but it is happening. Like, we are progressing towards that more aligned, intuitive future, and that's all we can do. So for you and your teaching of the tarot, if you were to give people a taste of your class right now so that they could experience what your offering is, what would you say is the most important thing you could teach them right now about tarot?
Oh, there's so many things. There's so many things. But I would say one of the biggest things is that tarot is just the breakdown of consciousness, as we were talking about. So we have all these different archetypes of consciousness in the way that it works. So you might be at different aspects of this path, or you might be holding different energies or different aspects of this path at the same time, no matter where you are. A lot of people don't know. Um, when we're talking about ceremonial magic, a lot of people don't know that magic is a path. And so that's a big part of what I teach within the tarot course, because I'm teaching tarot and Kabbalah together. But I'm also adding in aspects of ceremonial magic because it's the same thing that's happening here. Tarot was, well, at least the Rider Waite deck was created by Arthur Waite, who was a Golden Dawn ceremonial magician. So these cards were created for people on their journey in magic through their initiation. So if you look at the major arcana from 0 to the world card, from the Fool to the world card, you're looking at an initiate's journey. So what you're looking at is the process of ascension through the major arcana. And that's a huge part of what I teach. That side by side with the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, which is the exact same thing, going from the bottom sphere, the fruit, Malkuth, up to Kether, the crown or divinity or awareness. It's the process of ascension. So we look at it through tarot, through Kabbalah, and also through the path of ceremonial magic, but we really focus on the tarot. Now, what I really like about this is that I give practical things that you can do along your path, and practical ways that you can get in touch with these cards. Um, and one of the biggest things is learning the tree of life, learning the Kabbalistic tree of life, because each sphere on the tree of life has a name, like a Jewish name, and it has the English translation. So Malkuth means kingdom, or Had means glory, but it's also about the intellectual aspects. But when you look at the card that's associated with it next to the tree of life, and you associate that name from that Sephiroth with that card, and I ask the people, just label the card with the name of that Sephiroth and see what comes up for you with the energy of that Sephiroth. So, for for example, the eighth card of the major arcana is strength, and it would correspond with Hod on the tree of life, which is about the intellectual aspects, skill, learning, reading, study. And then when we look at the strength card with that Hod or glory, and also the intellectual aspects, with all of that in mind, and you look at the strength card, what do you see? And one of the things that I notice with the strength card, we have that infinity symbol above the woman's head. She's closing the mouth of the lion very gently. And what she's doing, what this lion is, it could be anger, it could be the pain of the psychological self. The psychological self exists within this Had Netzach Yesod triangle. And she's closing the mouth of this lion very gently. So she is wearing white. So she is the awareness of Kether, the pure I am principle, the awareness, the observer, what observes everything. This observer aspect, the presence, is closing the mouth of the psychological self. So what we're doing is we are taming the psychological self, and that's what the strength card represents. It also sits on the pillar of form, which is the internal pillar, the feminine pillar. So that also suggests that this card is about going internal. So this is more about inner strength than it is about outer strength or taming lions outside of you. This is going to be about taming your own lion, versus viewing a card that corresponds with a right pillar or a sphere on the right pillar. That would be more external energy. So it gives you these practical ways of viewing the tarot. Uh, Really, to me, it just makes it easier. It makes it easier to understand tarot in this way. And it really up levels the way that you give readings, or the way that you can read for yourself.
Fantastic. Yes, there's no limit really to how much you could learn. There's people that get into tarot and stay there forever because it is that imaginative world. And I took it's a book, but it was like a class. It was so good. Where she taught to intuitively learn the cards first. She was like, don't learn their meanings. I'd already started to a point, but I'm not that kind of analytical person. I like the story. So when she said that, it opened it all up, and I had permission to like just become friends with them and dive and get to know them. So I like what you said there about strength, because you can tell she's loving it. That's her pet kitty, and she's like, you can see. And there's people, like, I've heard people describe the card like, you can even, it's funny because I've even heard this said, and you could tell when you read his book, but Rider Waite himself, his book on the card deck is almost the worst book out there on the card deck. Like, have you read his book? It is so dry. It is so like blah 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 blah, and it's like there was no heart or depth. Meanwhile, the cards are amazing, and they're a whole universe in themselves. Yet it's funny because you can hear, it's almost like he probably channeled them. And some channelers know not what they do, or people that write stuff in their books and don't even realize what they've brought down. I think that was probably him. And I know he had help with Pamela Smith, who she herself had deep magical knowledge, and was a lot to do with why the cards were so amazing. So that could have all been her, even the depth, and maybe she should have wrote a book on it. Or did she write a book on it? Do
I'm
you
not
know?
sure. I'm not
I
sure. I
don't think
haven't.
so. I heard
Yeah.
she got pretty, like, just, she was a woman. Thanks
Yeah.
for drawing it. Bye bye. Here's like
Exactly.
$5. Like,
Hmm.
I heard she
Yeah.
got barely paid for
Hmm.
that, where the depth is all, and that makes sense too, because that's the feminine aspect brings forth
Hmm.
again that subconscious. So it's real depth there. And this brings me to your magic course that you were teaching. Are you still teaching that one?
Yes. Yep. The next one starts on October 5th. Yeah.
Oh, nice. And is it like the next part, or you keep running the same class and bringing in new students?
I'm running the same class, bringing in new students because what happens is you set somebody up with their tools, with their resources, you show them how to do it because it can be confusing at first, and people will wonder, if they're doing this right. So we work on it together. But you're set up with your tools, and then you go on and you can do your magical journey. It's really about self initiation and you being the teacher of the self. So I like to empower people to do their own research, to do their own work on themselves, to use teachers as guidances, but you're the teacher of the self. So,
Fan-
yeah.
That's so because you like Damien Eckel. I say his last name wrong all the time, Eckel. And he's basically teaching essentially witchcraft, but I mean that with love. I think a lot of us started in the Wiccan path. I certainly did. You start there, and then you grow, and then you come back, and you keep growing, and then you keep coming back, because essentially we are all witches and wizards, like we just are. I was trying to tell my son about God the other day. He's 4, and I ended up accidentally calling him a magical wizard, but like that part of my brain rang true. Like, and it was, oh, really, God's a magical wizard? Because that's just like, I don't know if you're from the Harry Potter generation where we're like, I want to be a wizard. So getting into this area of, even though I know it's not the end all be all, and it has to end all be all with the Christ consciousness for pure ascension. But when we're talking about actually enjoying our life and actually like walking a spiritual path that's, I don't want to say fun because that gets Luciferian, but like fun, like magic and the angel magic, like we're talking positive magic here, earth magic, element magic, angel magic, especially the elements. I like just dealing with the elements, which that reminds me of a question I wanted to ask you. How angels are one of those things that, like, some people see them as Christian, meanwhile they're barely in the Bible, but really they're more magical. And then I see them as energy frequencies. What do you think they are?
They are aspects of consciousness. They are energy frequencies. They are aspects of the universal consciousness. So a lot of these angels have L at the end of their name: Raphael, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel. It means of God. So the healing of God, or etc. They are aspects of God, or different little personalities or archetypes, maybe, or they are governors of the reality that God has set up, or this consciousness has set up. So, as above, so below, as you are working with angels within magic, or you're praying to an angel, or whatever it is that you're doing, you are invoking that aspect of consciousness. So that's what I was kind of saying earlier with separating consciousness into its parts and being able to pull which one out when you need it. That is what these angels are there for. That's what they do.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I don't know. I feel, and Damien himself like loves working with the angels, and he's the sigils. And I've gone through, and I'm not, because some things work for some people and some just don't.
Mhm.
And I found that the angels always fell flat with me. And I like angels. I like calling out to the angels. But anytime I tried to be like, the lower banishing ritual, and
Mhm.
AEA, that something went off inside me for AEA. But then you go off, and it's like, and then everything else almost falls flat, yet this thing triggers something. What would you say that is? Tell me your thoughts.
Eheye is I am that I am. That's what that
Oh, I
means.
know. Is
So.
there a reason that specifically would
Mhm.
call out? Like, why one entity versus another would call out to somebody?
So I think that that energy is striking something within you because it's that aspect of you that I was talking about with the Kether aspect, where you are kind of the observer of the self. The I am principle is that thing before. It's the creator or the desire aspect of the self, that something comes out of that, some sort of desire comes out of that, like I am a parent, or I am a mother, I am a teacher, I am this. So that eheye is that I am that I am. That is just existence and presence. So I think it's interesting that that one called out to you. I'm kind of more curious of what that means to you, maybe after I
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah, maybe because I'm called to the purest of the pure, of like the highest of the high, the I am, the returning to our truest authenticity and what that means. It's why my learning and even my teachings are very all vast, because I'm trying to find like the quintessential, or I'm saying that word wrong, that essence, that it factor, the AEA, I am that I am. But what is that, right? Like we know that's consciousness intellectually. But if we were actually able, and this is what I think, so that's why it's funny if that's why it's pairing, and maybe that's because I love when I get synchronicities, because that's basically the divine saying you're on the right path. Good job. Like, so for me, I think that would almost be saying that's the right path. Hopefully, it's hard to say, right? Because your ego always likes to chime in and go, of course you're doing it perfect. You're perfect.
Yeah, or the ego will step in and say, "You're doing everything horribly, like, this is wrong."
I know, I teach people that
Yeah,
too. It's like we think it's always that you're the best, and especially pre-awakening, it'll be like, "You're such a loser. Who do you think you are?" It's that exact opposite energy. But then very quickly when you get into spirituality, you can go, "Oh yeah, we're God. We're the best at everything."
the the pendulum swings in the other direction, and that's something that I think that a lot of us have to go through along our path. There might be this back and forth too between disparity or self-loathing and then this kind of arrogance too on this other side. And it's not that I think that there's important information within both of those energies. There might be something within that self-loathing that is teaching you, like there's a part of you that's not okay with something. There's something that needs to change, and that might be why that part is screaming so loud. And then again, with that arrogance side, there might be something within there that you need to explore. But ultimately, it's about finding the balance between the two and not leaning far into one or leaning far into the other, because they're really kind of both uh, uh, opposites of the same coin. It's really kind of the same thing at the center of that, which is a little bit of both of those energies, the arrogance or self loathing. There might be something within the self. There's just something within the self that needs to be explored
I think it's the
to figure that out.
inauthenticity.
Yeah.
It's the not living in our truth one way or the other. It's the not really knowing who we are. And then when we do, it is so there's not much to it. Like as a human, we don't really get to see a lot of it, which actually brings me to a question I had for you. Because there's a lot of galactic federation business, and I used to be part of this group, like you said, one of my groups I used to be a part of a few years ago, that I ended up, but they has such good information. Do you think the Galactic Federation is physically real, or do you think they're just constructs in the fourth dimension? Because that's where I probably lie, though I would love if they actually were real.
Mm. I don't know. I don't know because uh, it's not something that I've experienced. I know it sounds weird being coming from somebody who is into the woo woo, into the spiritual, into all of this, magic stuff, but sometimes there's again riding in the middle of I have to see it to believe it, and then also sometimes you have to feel it to believe it. So sometimes if you feel strongly that something like that is happening, like I used to, again, I was a conspiracy theorist at heart, like as a teenager. So I was really wholeheartedly just into the whole ancient aliens thing for a very long time, but something changed within me as I got older, and I'm like, I'm not sure if these are real physical beings or if these are energies, like you're saying, they're in some other dimension. This other y- uh they're on this other frequency that we can kind of tap into if we know how to or if we know what we're doing. There is this lady who I love to watch. Her name is Gigi Young on YouTube. I'm not sure if you've heard of her, seen any of her videos.
Don't think her specifically.
She talks a lot about aliens. She talks about different planets and their energy. She gets into the Rudolf Steiner stuff.
Oh, I love him.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting. I love her videos. Again, I might not be aligned with absolutely everything, that she talks about, but she has such good wisdom in there that actually was pivotal for me finding my path and piecing things together in my own way, like the way that rituals work or the way that consciousness is manipulated. Um, but the way that she talks about these aliens, she kind of implies that they're physical people, or not people, but beings, but that they are us from like this different timeline. So like we'll never come across another species that is not us in another timeline. So I thought that that was interesting, and I might not buy that wholeheartedly, but I can see in a way how we are all aspects of divinity, and how I always say as above so below. You'll never deal with an energy that's not already a part of you, and the reason that we come into contact with certain energies outside of us is because they are certain parts of us that need to be dealt with and integrated. Um so I don't know, I think that that's an interesting topic that I probably haven't fully formed an opinion about it yet.
I want an opinion because I want them to be real because that would be nice, but it doesn't reign true. You know what I mean? It doesn't. I think they're fourth dimensionally real, just like the gods and the angel. Well, the angels are like kind of higher because they're like that control factor, like you said. But then the gods kind of emanate out of them into their subsections of archetypes, and they all exist. So, and I have experienced myself, like you have to, I have experiences of connecting with something that talked to me, but that could be the higher self, like literally talk to me. So that, and I've had experiences of knowing I was God, like fully, like fully. And then as a child, I saw beings that I used to think was a cartoon penguin, but now I'm thinking after rewatching that movie with my kids, the Totoro. It was a little Totoro, like it was, but that was when I was a kid. But I viscerally saw it, and I wasn't that young that it was imagined. It was, I actually saw it, and even now I can see colors. Like I can see like orbs. Like people talk about seeing orbs. I see them, but it's almost like what Marvel does when they show the witches. You know how she makes her fake
Yep.
hologram world with the. I'm terrible with my shapes, failed kindergarten. But you know what I mean? Like I see those,
Yeah.
like the layers of the matrix like that. They got that right, like the shapes. But anyway, so I know that it's possible to see things, but is it physically real? Is there things above us in a spaceship watching us? You know what I mean? I would
Well,
love that, maybe. I don't know.
but I mean, it's also kind of goes back to what you said at the very beginning of the talk. Are we real?
Yeah,
I
true.
mean, are we even, I mean, we are atoms and molecules vibrating together
We're the
so
most
fast
real thing.
that
Like
we
as far
seem,
as real
yeah,
goes, we're
we're the
the
most
most.
dense. Yeah.
But like
Well, I mean, maybe Gigi Young talks about how there are dimensions that are even denser than this one, and
true.
I
I don't want to
I can
imagine that.
hardly
Ugh.
fathom it. I know, I
Yeah,
know.
like second dimension and stuff, like where everything is flat, like allegedly, if that's one of the theories to be believed. And actually, do you know Ashiana Dean? Have you ever heard of her? She's very
Mm.
controversial. She's someone that she has a tree of life, but it's, I think, 15. She sees everything in 15s, but in the 15 is 12, and in the 12 is 3. And it just really breaks down. And I've always seen 15. I don't know. So that I really vibed with almost all of her teaching stuff. She believes in the aliens being physically real, that the Greys are involved in the government. And as a conspiracy theorist, you would know this. And then the ancient aliens, I think the ancient aliens is that we just used to be ascended, like Atlantis times, Lemurian times. I believe in those. And that we were very ascended and we had the powers, but then we felt, that's the fall. That's the whole Bible. That's the fall. And then now we're not magical anymore.
I think that that's kind of the case too, that we had we had power, we had magic, and that magic, I think, has been passed on through, I don't know, a lineage or through systems or cults. This magic has just been passed on until today, and that's why that symbolism is so heavily used within our culture, our entertainment industry, government. I mean, it's everywhere. That symbolism is absolutely everywhere. And I think that there's something to that, that there is magic. I mean, we were like this ascended species, and then over time, we are pulled more into this dense reality, and forgetting who we are, kind of like the journey of the sun. As we are going through the cycle of the year, the sun gets darker and darker, like our reality gets darker and darker and darker until we hit that winter solstice, and then it starts to get lighter and lighter and lighter. We are like ascending into darkness. We are consciousness, or that sun, that solar consciousness, or that Christ consciousness, descending into darkness to get to know its darkest aspects and integrate them in the best way that we can, and then eventually come back up out of that with this new perspective, with this new insight. So in my opinion, I kind of think that that's what's going on there.
That's yes, exactly. I 100% agree. That's exactly what I see too. I would like a fancier ending. Like there was some, that's why I left that like culty group I was in a couple years ago, is because she started talking with the ascension and how we were going to pop and a bubble would go around us and we'd be protected and everybody else would be taken to a different planet. And I'm like, no, no, that's not how it's going to happen. It's going to be way longer, way more human, way more boring.
Yeah,
We are going to ascend,
it's
but just generation by generation back up we will go, and we are in an accelerated ascension right now, and we're the pioneers of that. So we are in a highly magical time where we're getting our magic back. But I think the reality of all the conspiracies of the government is that they know the all is mind. They know we generate reality, so they've done everything in their power to dumb us down, so we're useless generators, and they use us to manifest the reality they want. So they get to sit there
exactly.
and, I don't know, mwahaha and be evil. I don't, maybe, the law of one, if they actually want to be evil. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Oh gosh. Yeah, so it comes from that ego. It comes from that place of lack and a place of fear. There's such an amount of fear, um, that one would have to have in order to keep accumulating wealth. And I don't think money is evil. I don't think it's wrong to pay your bills or anything like that. And money's energy, but you would have to be in such a state of fear, in such a state of lack, to keep accumulating and to build such strong borders to protect what it is that you have so much, so hard. And I think that that's what's going on, where people really want to protect their empire or whatever it is that they feel uh, shields them from the outside world that's dangerous and dark and hopeless, or, or whatever, kind of feelings that they might have. That's really what I think that it is. And it might be that they don't, I think that they know about consciousness, of course, because they use this information to manipulate and to funnel energy into certain places that they would want to funnel it into. Just like how you were talking about with this group, we're all contributing energy into this center and creating something along a ley line, maybe. I mean, there's some dark stuff that can happen on ley lines and siphoning energy from specific places that have a lot of energy, like big cities. And anyway, these people, I think, want to hold on to what they've got because it's all that they have, or it's all that they perceive that they have. And there's that battle between the light and the dark there. And it's not like we can just get rid of it or act like it's not there. Um, you kind of have to work with it in a way too.
No, I love that. I love that very human take because that's what I'm always trying to tell people. They make these huge, elaborate, like conspiracies. And it's funny because I too was into conspiracies, but at the same time, like they can be evil and bad, but it doesn't have to be such a grandiose story. And it could be like Area 51 could have been them finding ancient technology, if any of that's true. And I know we have Bob Lazar telling us about spaceships and things like that, but that could be a number of things that can I bring the story a lot more human, yet a lot more magical. Like because this magic that we have to create, that you teach, like what you do there with the tarot and the magic teaching and the learning to use your energy correctly when you know how to use it within the elements. And when you know your own astrology, you can work within the elements better because you know what works for you. Like there's so much intricacy to this, but it's kind of invisible. It's kind of faith. The Bible always talk about faith because a lot of this has to be taken on faith. We're not going to see this Hollywood ending, yet at the same time the story is just as miraculous. And when the story, like how we look back on Carl Jung, but when he was alive, he was doing well, but he didn't realize he was doing as well as he was. And even Rudolf Steiner himself wrote that like people thought he was a quack. And he wrote that like I'm not writing for you guys because he's like basically going, I know you guys hate me, like and saying I'm writing for the next age. Like I'm writing for people to come. And that's exactly what it is. And we're just going to keep passing it forward, passing it forward. So in 1,000 years, magic will be back. We'll be doing all the things that Atlantis was doing and hopefully not. It depends if the stories be true that they ruined it themselves by their own egos. And, it depends what your take there is on Atlantis. I haven't even nailed
Well,
anything down because what do you think?
I mean, look at what we have now and what we were just talking about with the magic that's used to control the people now. It's the ego. It's the ego that rules all of that and funneling all of this energy into this dark egregore or this you could even call it the satanic thing or this Luciferian thing or um, maybe Steiner would talk about the eighth sphere or pulling reality and denser into a more dense reality. This is what we're doing now. I mean, we are falling in consciousness now.
You think we're falling still? You don't think all of us or like,
No,
or is that the
no, I don't
split?
mean. Mhm.
Because that's one of the
Yeah,
rumored splits is that some people, the TV watching, snack eating type that just don't participate, they believe the news and they do everything they're told, they keep falling. But then there's a whole
yeah.
huge other population that's waking up en masse.
I think that. I mean, we are not all in the same reality exactly. We are in a shared reality, but we are not in the same reality as each other. We are on different frequencies and different dimensions or
Yeah.
timelines if you want to say it like that, but we are in different realities. So yeah, there is groups of people who are still going down. And what I mean by the people who are controlling things with this magical warfare, they are continuing this downward
Oh,
slope.
good. Okay, good. I think
Yeah,
so too, because the jig is up. I mean, you're so obvious. It's hilarious. The stuff that's going on, like, well, for in Canada and America, I'm Canadian, by the way. In Canada and America, it's like a
mhm,
joke, like a joke. They're comical. Ours was literally an actor. I just watched a thing of him, and before he
mhm.
got into politics, and I was like, "Oh my god, this just proved the world's a stage." He was up there being a playboy and laughing. It was just ridiculous. And it's like, but now you're a serious prime minister, and it's just like, "Oh my god, this is embarrassing that this is even happening with educated population as large as it is." Like we don't it's not a lot of uneducated people at least in Canada. Like this is all both first world nations. Like there's not much of an excuse people have to why this level of or low level of people are in power. Like, ugh.
Well, they keep doing it. They keep lowering the bar and seeing how low it can go. And there's another aspect too, is that I talked a little bit about this in my tarot course, that the reality that we create corresponds to the level of consciousness that we're at. So that includes our behavior, that includes our environment, the things that we manifest. It all corresponds to our level of consciousness, and that as above, so below, as within, so without principle. We always elect a leader who reflects us back to ourselves. And
Uh,
that might not be every person individual, right? But as a collective, I'm like
well,
the
like you were saying
collective
earlier,
of the
egregores,
society.
right?
Hmm.
Like we would have, there's
Yeah,
an American one for all of us, like America, we all share one, like so we are kin. But then Canada has its own, America, like United States
yep.
has its own, and even Mexico is
Each state.
included in us.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's, I wish that I don't see. I used to think people used to say I was an anarchist because I don't, not that I want to get into that topic, but I don't see a solution. Like I don't see a solution without, because it needs to be just disassembled. We're the government. Give us an app. We'll vote and read the laws ourselves. Like we are all educated enough, I think, for there not to need to be that parent state anymore in at least any first world country, and very soon every single country, because they're all progressing so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, whew, I don't know. It's definitely, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. It all does need to be disassembled for sure. It really does. But that's the whole point of what I was talking about consciousness falling. Consciousness has to fall. That is a natural cycle of consciousness. We materialize, and we do the Luciferian aspect is a part of that. That is a natural part. The light falls. And the reason that it falls is because there's gold and there's wisdom, and there's something important to extract from that fall. There's something that we, it's also like going into the subconscious mind. You go into the subconscious to pull something out for a
Yes.
specific reason. And you might not know it until after what that reason was. But it's the same thing here. The disassembling, that is that energy of Gebra on the tree of life, or that Mars energy. There is this aggression, maybe anarchist type energy too, that needs to be, that type of energy obliterates obstacles. It takes things down, it dismantles them. It's like the tower card in tarot, where that tower, we are calling that lightning strike down to tear this tower down, and then we rebuild it back up. We rebuild something better. Um, because if we don't tear something down, and I'm not saying not saying to be an anarchist or anything, I'm just describing the energy. But the when we take something down, and when we go through that really difficult experience, that's the gold, is that now we have that higher view. We're able to see it from above, and we can see what went wrong and what needs to be repaired, and then we take our best effort to repair it. And that takes us into the star card, which is the card that comes after the tower card. And that is going to represent a higher society.
That's fantastic. That's a very beautiful way to end too. I want you to get a chance though to let everybody, thank you so much for doing this with me today too. I really honor your time and I appreciate it. You have a depth that not everybody has. And I think you're already seeing it. And one day, like you're going to be you already are a powerful teacher, like a wise sage in an era where it's very, very required. And the way you're able to teach, because it's not nothing, I know lots of things, but I can't bring it out as coherently as like when I talk, people go, what? You know, but when you are doing your thing on your show, it's such a flow. It's making all the sense. It's laid out, it's articulated well, and you could just tell it's a perfect package completely. So let everybody know where they can find you, how to enter your courses. That's all in the description below already for anybody that wants to go ahead and check them out. I highly recommend it. And let us know where they can find you.
Yeah. Well, find me on YouTube. My YouTube channel is the Esoteric Cross, and everything that I talk about is centered on tarot, Kabbalah, ceremonial magic, energies, and also my website, theesotericcross.com. I offer 3 courses and tarot readings if you want a tarot reading. Uh, a course on Kabbalah, a course on tarot and Kabbalah together, and also a course on ceremonial magic. And everything should be starting in October again for all of those.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you so much for being with us here today on Transcending Ascension, and thank you for everybody for tuning in. Goodbye for now.